The hospital room buzzed with a mix of quiet urgency and anxious anticipation. Outside, the sterile white walls and flickering fluorescent lights were a stark contrast to the storm brewing within this delivery room. Tonight was supposed to be a night of joy and new beginnings. The high-profile CEO's wife was finally about to give birth to their first child. The air was thick with hope, relief, and the tension that always accompanies the birth of a child, especially in a family where public image was everything. For months, this couple had carefully maintained the illusion of a perfect life, projecting power and unity to the world, but beneath the surface, cracks had started to show. Now, with the wife in labor, everything was about to be tested in ways no one expected. The central figures in this drama were clear. The CEO, a man whose name was synonymous with success and control, was known for his commanding presence both in the boardroom and in public. His wife, elegant and poised, was the picture of grace, having handled the pressures of high society and motherhood with equal skill. Yet, lurking quietly behind this facade was a woman who threatened to shatter it all, the mistress. Unknown to many, she was no mere shadow in the background but a disruptive force whose sudden presence would shake the very foundation of this family. As the wife gripped the hospital bed rails, the CEO paced nearby, a mask of calm that barely concealed his nerves. The nurse moved efficiently between tasks, focused yet perceptive, aware that something was amiss even before it happened. The tension was palpable, not just from the impending birth but from an invisible undercurrent of secrets and lies. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when, to the shock of everyone present, the CEO accidentally brought the mistress into the delivery room. It was a moment so unexpected that it froze everyone in place, turning joy into disbelief. The nurse's reaction to this surprising mistake was even more astonishing. Her words sliced through the stunned silence, leaving everyone frozen in their tracks. What she said next would not only expose hidden truths but would also change the course of the night forever. This was not simply a story of childbirth, it was a story about betrayal, revelation, and the unmasking of a carefully curated life. The stage was set for a drama that no one present could have predicted, and as the events unfolded, the fragile balance between love and deception would be tested like never before. The CEO was a man who commanded respect and admiration in every room he entered. Known for his sharp intellect, charismatic presence, and ruthless business acumen, he had built an empire from the ground up. To the outside world, he was the embodiment of success, a devoted husband and soon-to-be father who balanced his demanding career with a seemingly perfect family life. His public image was carefully crafted, projecting power, control, and unwavering loyalty. Interviews, charity events, and social appearances painted him as the ideal partner and role model. But behind the polished exterior lurked a vastly different reality, one marked by secrets and deception that he guarded fiercely. His wife, a woman who had stood by his side through thick and thin, was the embodiment of grace and loyalty. She had devoted years to supporting her husband's ambitions, managing their home with poise, and preparing for the arrival of their first child with excitement and hope. Completely unaware of the cracks forming beneath the surface, she trusted him implicitly. To her, their marriage was a partnership rooted in love and mutual respect. She never imagined that the man who held her hand through this pregnancy was leading a hidden life, one that would soon threaten to unravel everything she believed to be true. The mistress, on the other hand, was a stark contrast to the wife's quiet elegance. She was a younger woman, ambitious and cunning, someone who had crossed paths with the CEO during a business trip months earlier. What began as a chance encounter quickly spiraled into a clandestine affair, fueled by stolen moments and whispered promises. The mistress was fully aware of her place in this secret triangle, both empowered by the attention of a powerful man and painfully aware of the limitations imposed by his public life. She was no naive bystander but a willing participant who sought validation and escape in the relationship. Yet, even she did not expect the situation to escalate so quickly, especially with the birth of the CEO's child looming on the horizon. As the wife's due date approached, tensions quietly simmered beneath the surface. The CEO struggled to maintain his facade of normalcy while juggling his growing guilt and the mistress's increasing demands. Meetings were cut short, late-night texts exchanged, and stolen afternoons became more frequent. The mistress's presence grew bolder, as if testing the limits of what could be hidden without consequence. Meanwhile, the wife sensed subtle changes, the unexplained absences, the fleeting looks, the sudden coldness, but she brushed them aside, unwilling to confront the painful possibility of betrayal. The emotional stakes escalated with every passing day. The CEO was caught between two worlds, desperately trying to hold on to his carefully constructed image, while the mistress felt the walls closing in, hungry for recognition and fearing the inevitable collapse. For all involved, the impending birth represented more than just the arrival of a child, it symbolized a crossroads where truth and lies would collide. The wife's hopes for a happy family, the CEO's desire to keep his reputation intact, and the mistress's yearning for a place in his life were bound to clash. What none of them anticipated was how this moment of joy and vulnerability would become the setting for a dramatic revelation, forever altering their lives. The hidden affair was no longer just a secret whispered in the shadows, it was on the brink of exploding into the light, with consequences that would be impossible to ignore. The day that had been anticipated for months finally arrived. Early in the morning, the wife began feeling the first intense waves of labor pains. At first, they were irregular and mild, but soon they grew stronger and closer together, signaling that the moment of delivery was near. With each contraction, a mixture of excitement and anxiety coursed through her veins. She clung to the support of her husband, whose calm demeanor reassured her even as the reality of childbirth made her breath catch in sharp, painful gasps. The couple quickly made their way to the hospital, the car ride tense but filled with quiet hope. The wife's breaths were shallow and measured, her grip on the door handle tightening with every passing minute. Upon arriving at the hospital, the atmosphere shifted. Nurses and attendants greeted them briskly but kindly, ushering the wife through the sterile halls toward the maternity ward. The husband remained composed, his face calm and collected, masking any internal turmoil that might have been simmering beneath the surface. To an outside observer, he seemed the epitome of a devoted partner, holding her hand, offering soft words of encouragement, and maintaining an air of steady support. His voice was steady, reassuring, and careful not to add any unnecessary worry. Yet, beneath that composed exterior was a man trying to keep his tangled emotions in check, aware that the arrival of their child marked a turning point for all their lives. The hospital itself was a whirlwind of controlled activity. The delivery room was alive with movement as nurses and doctors prepared the space for the birth. The rhythmic beeping of machines and the rustling of sterile gowns created a backdrop of clinical efficiency. Nurses checked monitors, adjusted IVs, and exchanged quick, professional words, all working seamlessly to ensure the best care for the mother and baby. The room was both a sanctuary and a stage, where life's most intimate and intense moments would unfold under the watchful eyes of medical staff. Amid the hustle, there was a palpable tension, an undercurrent of anticipation shared by everyone present. Family members waited just outside, their emotions a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and hopeful expectation. Friends and relatives had gathered, sharing whispered conversations and anxious glances, each one ready to celebrate the new life about to join their circle. The mood was tentative but hopeful, everyone focused on the miracle of birth. The wife's mother held her hand tightly when given the chance, offering quiet prayers and steady support. In this moment, the family appeared united, bound by love and the promise of a new beginning. Yet, beneath the surface, invisible currents of doubt and worry lingered, hinting that the evening would not unfold as smoothly as they all wished. What was supposed to be a straightforward, joyous moment quickly spiraled into chaos when the mistress unexpectedly appeared in the delivery room. The story behind her arrival was a tangled web of confusion and questionable decisions. Officially, it was labeled a mistake, a miscommunication between the CEO and hospital staff, but as the details unraveled, it became clear that the situation was far more complicated. The hospital was a busy place, with nurses juggling multiple patients and family members, and a simple error in escorting could easily happen. Yet, there lingered the unsettling question, was it truly an accident, or something more deliberate? The nurse assigned to the wife's case was efficient and professional, yet the pressure of managing numerous responsibilities in a bustling maternity ward created the perfect storm for errors. When the CEO arrived at the hospital with his entourage, including the unexpected guest. The nurse was momentarily distracted by the influx of people. The mistress had been waiting quietly in the lobby, and when the CEO's voice called her name, the nurse assumed she was a close relative or trusted companion. Without hesitation, the nurse escorted her directly to the delivery room, unaware of the fragile emotional balance about to be shattered. The slip, though seemingly small, would ignite a firestorm. When the wife's eyes met the figure standing awkwardly beside her husband, disbelief washed over her. She blinked, hoping it was a trick of the light or a cruel misunderstanding, but there she was, the mistress, clearly out of place, clutching a small purse, her face pale yet oddly defiant. The wife's heart pounded fiercely, a whirlwind of shock, hurt, and confusion threatening to consume her. The hospital staff exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the tension but unsure how to intervene. Some nurses cast worried looks, aware that this unexpected visitor could complicate the already intense atmosphere of the delivery room. The CEO, quick to sense the growing discomfort, attempted to regain control of the narrative. With a calmness that barely masked his panic, he offered an explanation. He claimed it had been an honest mistake, that the mistress had been brought along unintentionally due to a mix-up in arrangements. According to him, she was there for support, just like any other family member, and he assured everyone that her presence was harmless. His words, though meant to soothe, only fanned the flames of suspicion. The wife was unconvinced, her eyes burning with silent accusation. Family members nearby whispered among themselves, some shocked, others silently judging. The room that had moments ago been filled with hope now trembled with a fragile tension. The hospital's social protocols were suddenly tested as the nurse delicately balanced her duty of care with the growing personal drama. She considered asking the mistress to leave but hesitated, worried about the emotional and logistical repercussions during such a critical moment. The other medical staff tried to maintain professionalism, focusing on their medical duties while the undercurrent of discomfort simmered in the background. The wife's mother reached out to hold her daughter's hand, offering what little comfort she could as the atmosphere thickened with unspoken words and mounting dread. Everyone present felt the weight of the unexpected arrival. The wife's breath hitched, the CEO's facade began to crack, the mistress shifted uncomfortably, aware of the eyes and whispers. Time seemed to slow as the reality settled in. This was no ordinary birth scene. The presence of the mistress was a living, breathing challenge to the image of family unity the CEO had carefully crafted. It exposed the fragile fault lines beneath their relationships, and the nurse's earlier innocent mistake now threatened to unravel years of carefully guarded secrets. The emotional stakes escalated rapidly. The wife struggled to refocus on her labor, but the betrayal was raw and immediate, distracting her from the pain and the miracle unfolding. The CEO's polite smiles and reassurances felt hollow, and even the hospital staff could no longer ignore the dramatic undercurrent. Family members shifted nervously, some offering tentative support, others visibly struggling to contain their shock. The delivery room, meant to be a haven for new life, had become a stage for confrontation and heartbreak. As the minutes passed, the tension built like an invisible wall between those present. The nurse's presence became more than just medical, it was a silent witness to the unfolding drama. She kept glancing between the wife and the CEO, recognizing the emotional storm they were trying to weather. The mistake was no longer just about a mix-up in logistics, it was a moment charged with meaning, threatening to expose every hidden truth. The delivery room, once a place of quiet hope, now pulsed with a raw, uncomfortable energy, one that none of them could ignore or easily forget. Just as the room reached a boiling point with tension and unspoken accusations, the nurse stepped forward and spoke words that instantly silenced everyone present. Her voice was calm, steady, yet carried a weight that none could ignore. "Is this really the first time you're seeing her?" she asked the CEO, her eyes locking onto his with a quiet but piercing intensity. The question hung in the air, sharp and undeniable, cutting through the fragile veil of excuses and denials that had been hastily thrown up moments before. It wasn't just a question, it was an accusation wrapped in concern, a subtle challenge that threatened to expose the truth lurking beneath the surface. The room fell into stunned silence. The CEO's confident mask faltered, his eyes darting away as if searching for an escape. His usual calm demeanor cracked, revealing a flicker of guilt and panic beneath. The wife's heart pounded loudly in her chest as she stared at him, the nurse's words echoing in her mind and breaking down the carefully maintained barriers of denial she had been holding on to. The mistress, caught off guard by the nurse's directness, flushed with embarrassment and uncertainty, shifting uneasily in her seat. The other family members and hospital staff looked on, their expressions a mixture of shock, curiosity, and empathy. The nurse's simple question had pierced the tension like a blade, and suddenly, the hidden reality was no longer something whispered behind closed doors, it was laid bare for all to see. The nurse's statement did more than just raise eyebrows, it reshaped the entire atmosphere in the room. Up until that moment, there had been a fragile attempt to keep the situation under control, to pretend that the mistress's presence was an innocent mistake. But with her question, the nurse forced everyone to confront the uncomfortable truth. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or accidental arrival. The CEO's explanation was put under a microscope, and the cracks in his story became glaringly obvious. Her words implied a level of knowledge and awareness that unsettled the CEO, as if she had seen through his carefully crafted lies. It was a reminder that no matter how powerful someone might be, the truth had a way of finding its way into the light. Why did the nurse say this? The answer was layered with compassion, professionalism, and perhaps a quiet sense of justice. As a healthcare provider, she had witnessed countless moments of joy and pain in the delivery room, and she understood the sanctity of that space. To her, it was a place where honesty and trust should reign, where families should be united in their most vulnerable moments. Seeing the mistress in the room, so out of place and obviously unwelcome by the wife, she recognized that something was deeply wrong. Her question was an attempt to provoke honesty, to peel back the layers of deception and force the CEO to acknowledge the impact of his actions on those around him. It was a subtle but powerful intervention, meant not to shame but to bring clarity and protect the emotional well-being of the mother. The reactions that followed were immediate and intense. The CEO's face flushed with discomfort, and he struggled to find words to respond. His silence was as telling as any confession, speaking volumes about the truth he wanted to keep hidden. The wife's expression softened, not from forgiveness, but from a profound realization that the reality she had feared was now undeniable. The mistress, usually so composed, looked suddenly vulnerable, caught in the harsh light of exposure. The nurse's colleagues exchanged glances, some nodding subtly in support of their coworkers' courage to speak out. Even the hospital staff, trained to remain impartial, could not hide their human reactions to the unfolding drama. For several long moments, the delivery room was enveloped in a heavy, almost suffocating silence. It was a silence filled with unspoken words, shattered dreams, and the weight of betrayal. The nurse's question had become a catalyst, transforming a room filled with anxious anticipation into one charged with raw, emotional truth. No one moved, no one spoke, as if afraid that breaking the silence would somehow undo the impact of that powerful moment. The wife closed her eyes briefly, drawing strength from the quiet, while the CEO's gaze remained fixed on the floor, his carefully guarded world unraveling before him. In that frozen moment, the nurse's statement was more than just a question, it was a turning point. It forced the family, the CEO, and the mistress to face the reality they had been avoiding. It reminded everyone present that no amount of power or status could shield them from the consequences of their choices. The nurse, in her quiet courage, had given voice to what everyone secretly suspected but feared to say aloud. Her words lingered in the room like a shadow, a haunting reminder that truth, once spoken, could not be taken back. The charged silence in the delivery room broke as the wife's voice finally trembled through the air, sharp and filled with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "How could you bring her here?" she asked, eyes searching her husband's face for some shred of honesty, some reason that could make sense of the betrayal unfolding before her. Her words carried the weight of months of suspicion finally erupting into confrontation. The CEO's usually composed demeanor cracked, and for the first time, raw emotion flickered behind his eyes. He struggled to meet her gaze, caught between shame and desperation. The delivery room, once a place of hopeful expectation, became the stage for a painful reckoning that none of them were prepared for. The mistress, standing awkwardly by the side, couldn't hold back her own storm of emotions. Her face flushed with a combination of guilt and defensiveness, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to steady herself. She had never intended to cause such harm, but now, caught in the center of a family's deepest crisis, her resolve wavered. Anger flickered in her eyes, not just at the situation but at the CEO, who had both promised her discretion and failed to protect her from this humiliating exposure. At the same time, there was a visible strain of vulnerability, the realization that she was no longer just a hidden secret but a catalyst for destruction. Her voice rose slightly as she spoke, a mix of regret and justification bleeding through her words. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said quietly. "I thought I was just here to support him." The CEO, desperate to regain control of the spiraling chaos, launched into a hurried explanation, his tone defensive yet tinged with exhaustion. He insisted that the entire situation was an unfortunate misunderstanding, a mistake in judgment brought on by stress and confusion. He spoke of love for his wife, regret for the affair, and promises of change, hoping to salvage some semblance of trust amid the turmoil. Yet his words felt hollow, weighed down by the stark reality that actions spoke louder than any excuses. His gaze flickered between his wife and the mistress, torn by guilt but unwilling to fully admit the depth of his betrayal. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls echoing with the unsaid and the unresolved. Hospital staff who had been quietly observing found themselves uncomfortably drawn into the emotional storm. Nurses exchanged furtive glances, their professionalism challenged by the raw display of personal pain in a place meant for healing. One nurse stepped closer to the wife, offering a reassuring squeeze on her shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the impossible position she was in. Doctors, focused on their medical duties, tried to maintain calm and order, but the emotional weight was undeniable. The sterile delivery room had transformed into a battleground of broken trust and painful truths, where medical care was intertwined with heartbreak. Some staff struggled to stay detached, their empathy breaking through the clinical facade as they witnessed the family unravel. Tears welled up in the wife's eyes, her body trembling with the strain of labor and emotional shock. Years of love and loyalty seemed to crumble in that moment, replaced by raw, exposed hurt. She voiced the fears and questions that had haunted her in silence, demanding to understand why her husband had risked everything. The CEO's defenses weakened as he began to admit his failings, acknowledging the pain he had caused and the mistakes he had made. Yet, his confessions brought little comfort. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. The mistress watched in silence, overwhelmed by guilt and regret, unsure whether to stay or leave, her presence a constant reminder of the broken bond between husband and wife. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken emotions, resentment, sorrow, anger, and confusion blending into a complex tapestry of human frailty. The wife's mother, standing nearby, fought back tears, her protective instincts clashing with the pain of witnessing her daughter's suffering. Other family members shifted nervously, some whispering words of support, others avoiding eye contact, unwilling to confront the full extent of the damage. The nurse's earlier intervention had opened the floodgates, and now the room was filled with the sound of voices breaking, hearts shattering, and the painful process of reckoning with betrayal. As the hours stretched on, the delivery room became a place of both physical and emotional labor. Between contractions and medical checks, the wife grappled with her heartbreak, the CEO wrestled with his guilt, and the mistress faced the harsh consequences of choices made in secrecy. The hospital staff continued their duties with quiet dedication, doing their best to provide care amid the chaos. The unfolding drama was a stark reminder that the birth of a child, while a symbol of hope and new beginnings, could also be a catalyst for painful truths and difficult confrontations. The fragile ties that bound this family were being tested to their limits, with no clear resolution in sight. Looking back, the affair hadn't started as a dramatic betrayal but rather as a subtle and almost imperceptible shift in the CEO's behavior. It began months ago with late-night work calls that seemed to stretch longer than necessary, whispered conversations that abruptly ended whenever the wife entered the room, and unexplained absences that became more frequent. The CEO had always been a demanding man, but now there was a coldness creeping into his eyes, a distraction that was hard to ignore. What had once been a trusting partnership slowly gave way to a growing distance, unnoticed by most but painfully obvious to those paying close attention. The wife had sensed something was wrong, a feeling she tried to dismiss as anxiety or the natural stresses of pregnancy. However, small details started to gnaw at her: missed dinners, a phone buzzing with messages that she was never allowed to see, and subtle changes in his tone when she asked about his whereabouts. Friends tried to reassure her, saying that men under pressure often withdrew, but her intuition whispered a different story. She caught herself hesitating before asking questions, afraid of the answers she might receive. Yet, she chose silence over confrontation, hoping that the man she loved would find his way back to her before it was too late. From the mistress's perspective, the affair was a complicated mixture of excitement, ambition, and loneliness. She was drawn to the CEO's power and charisma, captivated by the glimpse into a world of wealth and influence that had previously seemed out of reach. At first, their encounters were discreet and infrequent, secret meetings in hotel rooms and quiet restaurants where they could pretend for a few hours that the outside world didn't exist. But as time passed, the relationship deepened, fueled by stolen moments and whispered promises. She believed she was the one who truly understood him, the person who could provide the connection his public life lacked. Yet beneath her confidence lay an uncertainty, wondering if she was merely a temporary escape or something more. The affair, however, was never without complications. Misunderstandings arose as the CEO tried to balance two lives, juggling meetings and family obligations while sneaking away for secret rendezvous. There were moments of frustration on both sides: missed calls, broken promises, and growing resentment. The mistress sometimes questioned her place in the CEO's world, feeling sidelined and unvalued despite her efforts. Meanwhile, the wife's suspicions grew, though she remained hesitant to confront the truth directly. These layers of secrecy and denial created a fragile tension, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The culmination of these hidden moments led to a series of near misses and escalating conflicts. The CEO's attempts to compartmentalize his life became increasingly difficult as the wife's unease grew louder and the mistress's demands for attention intensified. Invitations to private dinners turned into awkward encounters, text messages accidentally left visible sparked silent confrontations, and the delicate balance of lies threatened to collapse. Yet, both the wife and the CEO clung to hope, she hoping for a return to the way things once were, and he hoping to keep the facade intact long enough to avoid disaster. Looking back, it was clear that this moment in the delivery room wasn't an isolated incident but the inevitable result of months of secrets and deception. The misunderstandings had piled up, the ignored red flags had become glaring warning signs, and the fragile trust had finally shattered. Each person involved carried their own pain and regrets, trapped in a cycle of denial and longing that had brought them to this painful crossroads. What began as quiet suspicions and hidden meetings had erupted into a confrontation that no one could avoid. The past was no longer something that could be ignored, it was now the present, demanding reckoning and truth. The emotional turmoil that erupted in the delivery room cast a heavy shadow over what should have been a moment of pure joy and new beginnings. The wife, already battling the physical intensity of labor, found her mind flooded with pain far beyond the contractions rippling through her body. The shock of betrayal, the raw heartbreak of seeing her husband with another woman, especially at this vulnerable moment, sent waves of distress crashing over her. Her breathing grew uneven, and the nurse noticed a sudden spike in her anxiety, understanding how emotional stress could affect the delivery process. Despite the medical team's best efforts to keep her focused, the mental anguish lingered, making every push more exhausting and the journey to bring their child into the world even more arduous. Family members waiting just outside the delivery room were caught in their own storm of emotions. The wife's mother, who had been a source of quiet strength, now struggled to hold back tears, her face etched with sorrow and concern. Close friends who had gathered to share in the anticipation were suddenly confronted with the painful reality behind the polished public image they had admired. Whispers of shock, sympathy, and confusion spread quietly among them as they tried to process the unexpected turn of events. The CEO's family members, some visibly upset and others stoic, grappled with the harsh truth that their carefully maintained family facade was cracking in real time. The hospital waiting area became a place of uneasy silence and hushed conversations, the joy of new life overshadowed by betrayal and doubt. Amid the emotional chaos, the nurse remained a steady presence, her role extending far beyond medical care. She moved with practiced grace, offering gentle reassurances to the wife, encouraging deep, steady breaths, and providing moments of physical comfort through soothing touches and calm words. She also acted as an informal mediator, carefully navigating the delicate dynamics between the husband, the wife, and the mistress. Recognizing the fragile emotional state of everyone involved, she worked to maintain a professional yet compassionate atmosphere, ensuring that the medical focus remained on the health and safety of both mother and baby. Her ability to balance empathy with efficiency helped prevent the situation from spiraling further out of control. Meanwhile, the CEO was engaged in a different kind of battle. Outside the medical demands of childbirth, he was trying to manage the fallout of his actions with calculated words and gestures. His attempts to placate his wife with whispered apologies and promises to fix things were met with cold silence or tearful disbelief. Behind the mask of a successful businessman, he grappled with guilt and frustration, aware that the consequences of this night would ripple far beyond the hospital walls. He made discreet phone calls to trusted aides, trying to contain any potential leaks of the scandal, while also attempting to reassure family members and staff that the situation was under control. Despite his efforts, the veneer of control was thin, and cracks were visible to anyone paying close attention. Then came the moment that everything had been leading to, the arrival of the baby. The cries of new life pierced through the tension, cutting through the heavy atmosphere with a sharp, undeniable clarity. In that instant, the birth became a symbol of hope and renewal amid chaos. The fragile new life represented a chance for healing, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, beginnings could emerge. The wife, exhausted but resilient, held her child for the first time, tears mingling with relief as the weight of pain momentarily lifted. Family members gathered, their conflicting emotions softened by the miracle before them. The baby became a focal point, a silent plea for unity and love despite the fractures surrounding them. This bittersweet arrival underscored the complex realities of family and forgiveness. While the wounds were fresh and the road ahead uncertain, the birth was a poignant reminder that life continues, even when relationships are tested. The nurse's calm presence, the family's tentative support, and the baby's innocent arrival created a fragile but vital thread of hope. It was a moment that none in the room would forget, a moment where pain and joy collided, forcing everyone to confront their feelings and consider what the future might hold for this fractured family. In the days following the dramatic incident at the hospital, rumors began to swirl quickly, threatening to engulf the CEO's carefully cultivated public image. As a high-profile businessman known not only for his success but also for his family values, the news of his mistress appearing in the delivery room was a scandal ripe for media frenzy. Gossip columns and social media exploded with speculation, some sympathetic to the wife's plight, others condemning the CEO's betrayal with harsh judgment. Tabloids scrambled for insider details, while anonymous sources hinted at the cracks in the seemingly perfect marriage. What had been a private family crisis was now a public spectacle, forcing everyone involved to confront not only personal heartbreak but also the glare of public scrutiny. For the wife, this sudden exposure was both a curse and a strange form of liberation. The initial shock and pain gave way to a complex crossroads where she had to decide how to move forward. Forgiveness seemed distant, a mountain too steep to climb in the immediate aftermath. Separation was an option she considered, envisioning a life where she could reclaim her dignity and build a future independent of betrayal. Yet, somewhere in the turmoil, a spark of empowerment began to emerge, a realization that her worth was not tied to her husband's actions, and that she had the strength to rebuild her identity on her own terms. Support from close friends and family bolstered her resolve, encouraging her to take control of her narrative rather than allowing it to be defined by scandal. Meanwhile, the mistress found herself at a crossroads as well. The sudden public revelation shattered whatever illusions she had about the affair remaining hidden. Her future with the CEO was uncertain, clouded by guilt and the harsh realities of the consequences she had helped set in motion. Some whispered that she might disappear quietly, choosing to avoid further controversy and fade from the public eye. Others speculated that she could attempt to claim a more permanent place in the CEO's life, fighting against the odds for recognition and stability. Whatever her path, it was clear that the mistress's role had shifted dramatically, from a secret kept in the shadows to a central figure in a very public drama. The decisions she made in the coming weeks would define not only her relationship with the CEO but also her own sense of self-worth. The CEO himself faced a storm of repercussions, both professional and personal. His company's board members expressed concern about the potential damage to the firm's reputation, prompting quiet discussions about leadership and accountability. Investors grew wary, and media scrutiny intensified, all placing pressure on the CEO to manage the fallout swiftly and effectively. Internally, he grappled with a profound personal reckoning, confronting the impact of his actions on his family and his own sense of integrity. Attempts to issue public statements or control the narrative were met with skepticism, as the story had already taken on a life of its own. The CEO's image, once untouchable, was now tarnished, and repairing the damage required more than just words. It demanded genuine change and accountability. Beneath the surface of public gossip and professional challenges, the heart of the matter remained deeply personal. The incident forced all involved to reflect on themes of trust, betrayal, and the fragile nature of family. Trust, once broken, proved difficult to restore, especially in the shadow of such a public revelation. Betrayal cut deep, not only in the wife's heart but within the fabric of relationships that had once seemed unbreakable. Yet, amid the pain, there was a recognition that families are complex and imperfect, capable of both harm and healing. Some hoped for reconciliation, believing that love and forgiveness could prevail, while others prepared for paths that diverged irrevocably. The story became a cautionary tale about the consequences of hidden secrets and the importance of honesty. It reminded everyone involved, and those watching from afar, that the choices we make ripple outward, affecting not just ourselves but those we claim to love. The CEO's downfall was not just a personal failing but a public lesson on accountability and the cost of duplicity. For the wife, the ordeal became a catalyst for self-discovery and resilience, proving that strength can emerge even from the deepest wounds. The mistress's fate remained uncertain, a symbol of the complex human emotions entwined in desire, regret, and consequence. As the dust settled, what remained was a fractured family facing an uncertain future, each member grappling with the aftermath in their own way. The incident left an indelible mark on their lives, a reminder that the path forward would require difficult choices, honest conversations, and perhaps, in time, healing. It was a story of downfall and redemption, heartbreak and hope, a reflection of the messy, complicated reality behind the carefully curated images of success and happiness. In the quiet moments that followed the storm, reflection settled over the delivery room like a gentle, if tentative, balm. From the wife's perspective, the journey had been one of pain and revelation, but also of awakening. She realized that relationships are fragile, built on the foundation of honesty and trust, and when those pillars crack, the entire structure risks collapse. Yet, through the heartbreak, she found a renewed sense of self, strength born from vulnerability and the courage to face difficult truths. She understood that forgiveness is not an obligation but a choice, one that must come from the heart and at the right time. For now, her priority was healing and embracing the new life she had brought into the world, a symbol of hope amid chaos. The nurse, ever the silent witness to countless births and family dramas, saw this incident as a powerful reminder of the complexity of human relationships. To her, the delivery room was more than a medical space. It was a crucible where joy and pain intertwined, where lives changed forever in an instant. Her surprising intervention had been motivated not by judgment but by a desire to protect the vulnerable and encourage truth. She reflected on how easily secrets can unravel and how important it is for people to confront reality, no matter how uncomfortable. The nurse believed that while betrayal can wound deeply, it can also open the door to honesty and, eventually, reconciliation. An outside observer, perhaps a close friend or family member, might have seen the entire episode as a microcosm of life's unpredictability, the unexpected challenges that test our resilience and force us to grow. They might have noted how appearances often mask deeper struggles, and how moments of crisis, while painful, can lead to profound transformation. This story was not just about betrayal or scandal, it was about the human capacity for forgiveness, change, and hope. It illustrated that even in the darkest moments, there is a chance for new beginnings, if only people are willing to face their truths and choose healing. As the final chapter closed on this painful night, the lingering lesson was clear: honesty is the foundation of all meaningful relationships, and when it falters, the consequences ripple far beyond the initial act. Yet, with honesty comes the possibility of redemption and growth. The family's future remained uncertain, but the birth of the child was a powerful symbol that life continues, that hope endures, and that even broken hearts can one day find peace. For readers, this tale serves as a poignant reminder to value truth, to confront pain with courage, and to believe in the possibility of healing and new beginnings. As the days turned into weeks after that unforgettable night, the nurse found herself reflecting deeply on everything that had transpired in the delivery room. She decided to write a letter, not for public eyes, but as a personal message to the family, hoping it might offer some clarity and comfort in the difficult days ahead. In her letter, she confessed that speaking up was not an easy choice. It was driven by a sense of responsibility, not just as a healthcare professional but as a witness to the fragility of human relationships and the power of truth. She explained that her intention had never been to shame or blame but to encourage honesty, believing that only through facing painful realities could healing begin. The nurse wrote about how the delivery room is a sacred space, a place where life's most vulnerable and profound moments unfold. She had seen countless families come together in joy and sometimes fall apart in sorrow, and she understood that behind every story were complex emotions, fears, and hopes. Her words acknowledged the deep pain the wife endured, the difficult choices the CEO now faced, and the uncertain path the mistress would have to navigate. Yet, despite the heartbreak, the nurse held on to hope that this family might find a way forward through compassion, forgiveness, and open communication. She urged them to remember that nobody is perfect, and that mistakes, no matter how grave, do not define the entirety of a person's character or their capacity for change. The nurse's letter was a plea for humanity, a call to see beyond anger and betrayal to the potential for growth and reconciliation. She reminded them that truth, though painful, is a gift that can set people free, and that embracing it with courage is the first step toward rebuilding trust. Her hope was that the family would use this painful moment as a catalyst to rebuild stronger foundations, grounded in honesty and mutual respect. Ultimately, the nurse's letter was a message of compassion, not only for the family involved but for anyone who has faced betrayal and heartache. She wanted them to know that they were not alone in their struggles and that healing, though difficult, is always possible. With kindness and understanding, she believed that love could find its way back, even in the most fractured of families. The letter closed with a wish for peace, resilience, and the courage to embrace a future where truth and compassion walk hand in hand, lighting the path toward new beginnings.